Welcome back to the Victory Podcast. I'm your host, Steve McGrath. In this episode, I'm pleased to bring you the #1 best-selling author on Amazon. It is a guy who just wrapped up his 6th year in the NFL. It's Bennie Fowler. Now, Bennie goes from being an undrafted rookie free agent in 2014 out of Michigan State to making his way onto the Broncos squad, catches Peyton Manning's last pass as he wins the Super Bowl, and has continued to be able to find success in the NFL, having just wrapped up his past year with the New York Giants. So Bennie talks about his story through the NFL, but also we're going to talk about The Silver Spoon, his new book. A lot goes into writing it, and he breaks it all down. So before we get into Bennie, his story, and what he's been up to, I need to remind you all that we're brought to you by Team Builder. And Team Builder works with over 500 high school football programs nationwide, as well as colleges in the NFL. So if you need more information about weightlifting programs, anything that goes into it, go there. Use the promo code VICTORY and you're going to get a free gift. So show them some love. But until then, here's my conversation with Bennie Fowler. All right. I am pleased to be welcomed by new author and a man that just wrapped up his 6th year in the NFL, none other than Mr. Bennie Fowler. Bennie, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I mean, you just released Silver Spoon, The Imperfect Guide to Success. So just from the top, man, can you tell how much time does it take for one to write a book? How much time and effort and energy have you been pouring into this?
A lot. So, just with playing, I can't always put as much time into the book, throughout every single week. So I was just during the season, I would do it on off days and Mondays. Those are our pretty relaxed days. So, but it took about a year and a half. I definitely learned a lot of patience throughout this. So it was a good process. It was a long process, but I'm very thankful. Just got Amazon #1 bestseller in a couple different categories, so I'm very proud of that. Yeah, I appreciate that. So, that's where we're at right now with it.
That's so awesome. And I bought Marcus Ogden's book, The Success Cycle. So I promise once I get through that one, Silver Spoon's going to be next up for me. But I saw that the foreword was by Draymond. So, of course, there's some Michigan State roots there. What was it like, coordinating that with obviously a very successful athlete in his own right?
Yeah, that doesn't just come from Michigan State roots. We've known each other. We played on the same AAU team. We've been friends since high school, but we got really close at Michigan State. So coordinating that with him wasn't too hard because I know he'll do anything for me. So I just shot him a text. Well, actually, I just called him and I asked him if he would be a part of it, and he said, of course. And I really appreciate him for that.
So what I was reading was that it seemed as though Kobe Bryant and the Mamba mentality was a very big component for you in sort of how you were trying to navigate maybe writing the book or how you even focused your own mind. So of course the timing of his passing with right around the same time of the release of your book is obviously, not something that was planned, but if you could just speak a little bit about that, if I have that correct, how much did that, or using him as someone to sort of use as a mentor and a guide, how does he just sort of factor into everything here?
Well, you could kind of see his transition from his basketball career to him, winning Oscars and things of that nature. So that's where I kind of got the inspiration from. You play sports, but people, after you're done playing, sports continue to go on. So what are you going to have when sports is done? So I wanted to write a book. I know that he inspired me a lot. As my favorite athlete of all time. I definitely looked up to him in so many different ways, and just the way he went about his work, but who he was as a man. Later on in his career, and him getting finished up in his career, and then going right into another career, but still having that same drive and passion towards everything. But I definitely learned a lot from him, and that's definitely one of the reasons why I wrote a book. And he's inspired me in so many different ways, and he will continue to be inspiration for others. And I hope to be, to inspire others as well with my book.
Oh, and I'm sure you will, because, and if I have this right, you're calling this a self-actualization book. So it's not like a, how-to, so to say, but it's sort of the help someone realize what their full potential is. Not a self-help. How did you to sort of shape your approach for it to be more along the self-actualization line?
Well, it's because I know that we all have these capabilities of achieving success, leadership, whatever it may be. We have all these capabilities already in us. Now, are we going to put in the work? That's the thing, and that's what this book is to help you realize is that there is no easy road. Nothing in life worth having is going to come easy. You never heard anybody get to the top of the mountain like, oh yeah, I thought that was easier than I thought. And it's usually a hard process, and but that's where you understand who you are. You gain confidence. You gain that swagger, through that journey. So the prize is in the journey, and I mentioned that throughout the book. And I had a teammate that passed away in a car accident a couple years ago, Mike Sadler, and his mom came up with that statement: "The prize is in the journey." I truly believe that the journey is worth more than the prize.
Oh, and I agree. So if you feel like that mountain was too easy, obviously that was just a hill. It wasn't really a mountain if it was too easy for you and you're not really finding that prize in the journey.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
No, how do you get inspired to write a book? Like, at what point do you make this decision? Like, this is what I want to do.
I made that decision when I got cut from Chicago, and I was at home for a couple weeks, just working out for different teams. And I was like, all right, well, like, hopefully this isn't the end of my career, which it wasn't. But what am I going to want to do? So I want to do public speaking. I want to inspire people. I want to share my stories with everybody. I love teaching leadership or goal setting or achieving success, handling. Those things are better taught with stories. So I'd rather teach things through stories and do public speaking and put on workshops and seminars to inspire others, because that's how I was inspired. I wasn't inspired through public speaking, but I feel like I can inspire a lot of people with that.
Yeah, and I mean, the story that, of course, is still being written is obviously one
Yeah.
that is going to reach a lot of people. But before we get into your actual career journey, I want to point out that the whole self-actualization thing is not something that relates to sports. Even though I'm talking to an athlete, we've mentioned Kobe and Draymond. This is about life. This is so much bigger than sports, and I just wanted to be very clear that this helps you manage relationships. Whatever your profession is, how to take it to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not just a book for athletes. That's why I have entrepreneurs, and then I have my mom and my dad in there, as well as my brother, even though he was an athlete, but he's a coach. But I want people to understand that, being an athlete, a professional athlete, is less than 1% of the world. So 99% of the world is going to have to figure out how to be successful in some other way. But some of all the principles that are in this book, regardless of if you're an athlete or not, you can apply in all types of life. And you don't have to be young to read this book. You can uh, be any age when to reading this.
Got it. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. And for the record now, through going through this process for the last 18 months or so, do you have any ideas for maybe some potential next books? Do we have anything else already in the works?
Yeah, I'm thinking about something, just like a little goal setting type of book, but the book will only be like, 5, 10 pages. It will give you a couple, some quotes, some inspirational quotes, and some things on how to break down your goals from long-term goals into short-term goals, because your short-term goals should lead to your long-term goals. And basically what I mean by that is success doesn't happen in a day, it happens every single day. So you have to navigate your success every single day. You can't just like 2020 started, even though we're a month in, and everybody has these goals where they might want to lose weight or they have this or that, but they don't break those goals down. So your goal might be to lose weight, but you should break that goal down. How many pounds? What type of deadline? What diet plan are you going to follow? And then what body parts are you going to work on every single day, or working upper body Monday, lower body Tuesday, Wednesday a day off, because I think balance is key, and then Thursday back into upper body, and then Friday lower body. But you have to find, you're basically, it's like a GPS method, and that's what I'm calling this goal setting system, GPS method, because when you put that destination in your maps or on your apps, it gives you the turn by turn directions, and those are your short term goals that will lead to your long term goal destination.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, I tend to think of goals in terms of layers. You know, to get to that end desire, there's just layers that you got to go through to continue to add on to what you're doing, so you can build this new person. But I love the GPS analogy. That's great. Now, of
Yeah,
course,
appreciate
before you
that.
get a
Thank you.
chance to, put out the GPS method or do any of this, like everyone else, you're a 16, 17-year-old kid just trying to navigate high school. And of course, we know where that leads, but can you just walk us back, man, to when you're that age? We know that you're a great football athlete. You know, you're all purpose, on offense, but you're big into track. You're a great track athlete. Played a little basketball too, as you mentioned. So what were you thinking back in high school? Was football always
Mm.
the route that you wanted to go down?
Oh, no, because I didn't start playing. I had played a little bit of little league, but that's not real. I mean, real football, so to speak. I stopped playing, and then I picked it back up my junior year. My mom actually made me back out for the team my junior year, so I was just playing basketball and running track in my first 2 years in high school, and then I got back into football, and I was able to earn some scholarships. Running a fast 40, but I wasn't a football player just yet. So back in high school, I was just trying to go to the biggest college where there was the most fans, and I wanted to play in front of a lot of people, but also wanted to play at home. So that's ultimately why I chose Michigan State. But I wasn't thinking about the NFL. I was just thinking about being a dominant college player.
Fair enough. And we found out just a couple hours before we started this podcast that Coach D'Antonio is no longer going to be the Michigan State coach. Obviously, we know that's where you went. So before we even get into your collegiate career, what are just some of your lasting impressions of Coach? What made him so successful? Because he was able to sustain and grow a program for so long. What is it about him? What are his fingerprints of success?
I would definitely say goal setting. Number one, he taught us how to set the right goals. And I mentioned, when I'm doing public speaking, I go back to Michigan State now. He broke goals down, how we needed to achieve certain things as a team and as players. He always gave us goal cards. So we did that. But I would also go back to discipline. That's one reason why I chose Michigan State, is because a lot of the things that my parents taught me, he would say those when he was recruiting, or he reminded me a lot of my parents. He was a very strict coach, but he was an awesome coach. He showed his softer side from time to time. He was a player's coach. He understood things, but he was just a good man. And I always tell this story, is that my favorite story about Coach D back at Michigan State is that we were eating a team meal one Friday, and it was kind of getting sloppy in terms of the conversation, people on their phones. And that next Monday, he gave us an etiquette class on how to properly eat a 3-course meal, what forks to use, what knives to use. And I was like, God really cares about us. This is not obviously just about football and wins and losses. So that was a great thing that he did.
That's awesome. Now, do you happen to remember your first ever encounter with him?
Ooh, my first encounter with Coach D, I would have to say when I went up for a game. I just remember Coach Enos. He was the running back coach at the time. He was always coming to our school. And then when I went up there in the summer, because I had a friend that I went to high school with that had already went up there. I went up there and got a chance to meet him, and he was just cool, and he was just he always had a serious look on his face, but he had a very soft voice when he talked to you.
Got it. Now, I want to fast forward just a couple of years into your Michigan State career, because by the time we're in 2012 and you are a redshirt junior, you lead the team 524 receiving yards, if I have that right. You said that when you were in high school, you
Mhm.
were just kind of getting into playing. So how did you up your game from being someone that's still getting used to it, obviously leveraging some great athleticism, to being, a leader at your school in a big time program when, Kirk Cousins is throwing you the ball, Le'Veon Bell. I mean, there's some real talented teammates that you have. So how did you find a way to elevate your game to stand out amongst them, let alone just the average player?
I had the athleticism. I just had to continue. I had to work tirelessly on my craft every summer, at least 2, 3 times a day. Andre Wright, who was a former NFL wide receiver who had went to Michigan State, and just picking the brains of guys like Blair White, Mark Dell, B.J. Cunningham, guys who had came before me. I had to learn what they had learned. That they had been playing this game for so long and knew the ins and all the techniques on how to get open. So I had to basically try to catch up every summer 2, 3 times a day just to work on that aspect of my game. So that's the way I had to do it.
Yeah. Now, do you ever get surprised at all that like Kirk Cousins gets this massive deal in the NFL? Le'Veon Bell, obviously an enormous talent and gets a massive deal in his own right. Like, did you have any inkling back, 8 years ago that these were going to be guys that were going to be not just leaders at the collegiate level, but huge time impact players in the NFL? Is there any, again, fingerprints of success?
I knew Kirk was going to be a quarterback for a long time. I didn't, obviously, you don't know the salary cap. I didn't know he was going to get that much money. But I knew he was going to be a quarterback in the NFL for a long time. Just the way he goes about his business, the way he can throw the ball, his understanding of defenses, and just all the throws that he can make. I knew he would be at least a quarterback for at least 10 plus years, no doubt in my mind, especially when I got to see him and be in the huddle with him and just the way he commands the huddle. Now, I had never been around NFL players like that, but just based off of, what I thought. And I knew Le'Veon was going to be a pro, 100%. When he first stepped on campus, our first scrimmage in the spring, he scored like 2 touchdowns, and just the plays that he was making. I knew he was going to be an NFL player.
Now, your year though as a team in 2012, on the field, you don't accomplish as much as you do in 2013, where this kid named Connor Cook shows up, and next thing you know, you guys end up being the number 3 team in the country. So, despite the great talent that was there the year before, the following year, you guys have great team success. Do you just recall anything in particular besides the obvious, change of quarterback? I think you had new offensive coordinators. Anything on the team level that you can pinpoint as to why there's just that big jump from year to year?
I think we just had to grow as a team. Going 7-6, you learn a lot of lessons. I feel like you learn more lessons in the losses. So, with every failure comes skill acquisition. So we lost a lot of close games that year, and I think we learned from that. We pulled out those games the following year, but just the type of swagger, we just grew as a team. We got a new quarterback. We got new leaders. I stepped up as a leader. Max Bulla, Denikos Allen, Jeremy Layford, Tony Lippett. It was just so many things. Isaiah Lewis, Darquez Denard, Trey Waynes. There's just so many players that we just stepped our game up. But we just had to go through that learning curve. A lot of us were first-time starters, so we had to go through that learning curve, and we learned, and then we brought it back the next year, and we took off. And I think the only Big Ten team in history to win all Big Ten games by 10 or more points. So very, very, very blessed.
Yeah. And I'm sure, that Notre Dame game aside, it's pretty much anything you could have hoped for in a run to be able to play that well. Not that
Absolutely.
I want to bring up any wounds there, but but by the time your career is over, though, do you have? I'm sure you think that you're an NFL caliber player. Did you think that you were going to get drafted? Do you remember having any expectations going into the draft?
Yeah, I expected to get drafted, especially how well we played that year as a team and how well I played individually and the plays that I made, especially in that Rose Bowl. And then just going 13-1, you figured that some teams would, maybe pull the trigger on myself, but only one Michigan State player got drafted that year. So that's how the cards fell that year. That's how the cards got dealt that year. The most receivers ever in NFL history drafted in that draft were in my draft class. So, a lot of talented players and a lot of talented people that I've actually, got to share the field with, such as Odell Beckham.
Now, what kind of chip on your shoulder does that sort of force you to carry when obviously you've done enough on film And like you said, all these receivers are getting drafted. You're still here. Obviously, you should have been, but ultimately, you're able to go to the Broncos and your path works out the way it does. How do you sort of balance the sort of I feel slighted versus, well, everything did work out?
Well, I remember Kobe Bryant saying some interview on YouTube, like, well, or maybe it was just his Muse documentary. He says, well, when you're going through something, what other choice but do you have but to go through it? So, uh, didn't I didn't go back to feeling slighted. It was like, all right, well, let's prove them wrong. So let's just go forward, let's move forward, and let's prove them wrong. And that's what I plan on trying to continue to do is, prove the doubters wrong and people that said that, I wasn't, a draftable player. So I'm still here and I'm going to continue to fight. I want to play 10 years and that's what I plan on doing.
And I have no doubt that you will. But one thing I wanted to point out, though, is so 2014, first year with the Broncos, you're on the practice squad. 15, you make it to the Super Bowl. Well-known fact, you're a champ. You catch that 2-point conversion from Peyton Manning. You wrote, and I saw you put this on LinkedIn. You were paraphrasing, I believe, from your book, the amount of mental reps that it took you to the point where when that 2-point conversion play gets called, you knew it. And you saw that
Yeah.
spiral coming so many times. You knew right where the ball would be. You knew everything about it. It was a no-brainer. So can you just talk about that 2-year span, the amount of mental reps you had to do to get ready for that, to be in that position?
Yeah, I do a lot of mental reps, a lot of visualization, just because I understand, like, obviously you're physically being taxed all the time. So if you, I understand the brain, and if you do visualization, your brain can actually get those practice reps without you actually doing it. So I just got into visualization early in my rookie with Dr. Perea, and it carried over into the Super Bowl year, and then when that moment came. Uh, the ball, just it looked like it was coming in slow motion.
Yeah. Now, that Peyton's last pass?
Yes, that was last pass ever thrown in the NFL.
Now, could you imagine if you caught that ball instead of Darius Slayton, you would have caught both Manning brothers last pass?
Oh yeah, that would have been crazy. That would have been crazy. That would have been awesome. But Darius is a good young rookie, and he's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't mean to jump forward there because I did want to ask before you get there. Right? It's so easy to look up your stats and be like, oh, well, in 2017 he's playing with the Broncos. 2018 is the Giants. You already alluded to the Chicago era. What's it like
Mm.
just how do you stay so mentally focused when just 2017 ends, you sign with Chicago before the season starts, you've been released, you have a cup of coffee with the Patriots. Like, you don't just go to the Giants. There's a lot of ups and downs, learning playbooks. You have the logistics of you moving around. How do you
Mm.
stay focused, just focus at the task at hand, and don't let any of these ups and downs, knock you off of your target?
Well, you just know what the goal is, and the goal is to play as many games as possible and play as long as possible. So there's no time to feel sorry for myself or anything like that. Just continue to keep working, because I know I'm talented enough, and I know that I can play at this level, and I've proven that. So that's not, Chicago just didn't work out, but uh, I think going to New England be right back on track to where I was when I first started in Denver, just because I wanted to impress Peyton so much. And then when I got around Tom, I had learned the playbook, some of the playbook pretty quickly. And, they ended up trading for Josh Gordon, which I understand, that guy's a freaking nature, incredible athlete. So, they moved on for me. But, just my study habits and me getting back and understanding, all right, this is what got me into the league. Let me put that same effort into, when I joined the Giants. And, I started on Monday night that first week I was with the Giants. I learned the whole playbook in 1 week.
That's awesome. Now,
Yeah.
before the Giants era, though, like, for you to only be with the Patriots for a few days, how do they break the news to you that, oh, hey, we have to release you? Do they tell you it's a numbers thing? Like, how do you, A, how do they tell you? But B, also, how do you just sort of handle something that's going to, hurt the ego and make you to force you to readjust your plan?
They let me know because they had an injury to the offensive line. They had to bring an offensive lineman up from the practice squad, so they had to let me go. But I try to see the good in every situation. Bill Belichick doesn't sign players just to sign players. He obviously signs you if he thinks that you can play in his system, understand his system, and that he thinks you're talented. So they don't just pick up players. So I just took the positives from that and just went with that.
Got it. And hey, a lot could be happening this offseason. Who knows? That little stint, you never know how that door opens later down the line. But
Absolutely.
ultimately, for you to catch on with the Giants, you said that you learned the playbook in a week. How do you compare Eli to Peyton? Not on the field, because of course they're two different guys, but mentally their approach to the game. How similar, dissimilar were they?
Both of the two most prepared players I've ever played with. Both are great guys. Take their time out to help guys understand what's going on, how to do things the right way. Obviously, we saw that with Eli and Daniel Jones, but even with Peyton, the year we won the Super Bowl, he did that with Brock because he hurt his foot. But both great guys, both great storytellers, just awesome dudes. All telling jokes, but both great players, and I appreciate both of them.
Got it. And one thing I did want to ask, and I'm sorry this isn't sequential here, but going back to 2017, when you have your the Monday night game with the Broncos, where you're able to catch 2 touchdown passes in a game, for someone that has worked as hard as you, and of course you've put up stats your entire career, but to finally have that one game, that one moment where you get to have a multiple TD game, what did it mean for you just to be able to have that time at the NFL to have that one game where you really get a chance to flourish?
It just shows that hard work pays off, and that I set goals, and I had set out to be a starter that year, and that's what I accomplished. And a lot of the papers had me not making the team that year, but I took that and I just used that as fuel. And they don't understand what I'm made of, and I proved those people wrong. And coming out on Monday night, catching those 2 passes from Trevor, and starting the season off like that was great.
Awesome. Well, Benny, I like to end the podcast here with this little thing we call the gauntlet. So I got a couple of quick hitter questions for you that I need your knee-jerk answer on. Oh, I hope you're ready for it.
All right.
I got to know what's
Yep,
most
I'm ready.
important. Is it having the number 1 offense or the number 1 defense?
No, if you want to win a championship, number 1 defense.
Even after what the Chiefs just did?
Yeah, I would still take defense always wins championships.
And I
Their
agree with
defense
you,
made
but
plays at the end of that game.
no, they did. And Patrick Mahomes is just something special right now. Now, do you
Yes,
have a
absolutely.
pregame ritual that you stick to?
I wear NBA socks every NBA.
All right, I like that. Now, what's most important? Is it the players or is it the scheme?
Players.
There's no right or wrong answer there, but I think you're right. But ultimately, it's
Yeah.
definitely a blend. Now, to
Yeah.
this point, what would you say is your favorite football memory?
I would say I 2 of them: winning the Rose Bowl and then winning the Super Bowl. Those are my favorite football memories. I can't just say one. Those 2 though.
Yeah, hard to really top those, isn't it? It's setting the bar pretty high for what you have coming ahead of you for the rest of your career. But lastly, here, and I
Mm.
think it's the most important question: what would you say to a young 16, 17-year-old kid that sees everything that you've accomplished? What's the best piece of advice that you could give them?
When it gets tough, continue to keep going. If you're very passionate about your dreams or your desires, whatever you want in life, continue to keep going, because if plan A doesn't work out, if you have a strong enough plan A, it'll lead into your plan B. Don't have a whole bunch of plan A. All right, if this doesn't work, then I'm gonna go to this. Just have a strong plan A and put all your effort behind that, and that will lead to your plan B. So that's what I would tell them.
Awesome. Well, Benny, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, it's Silver Spoon, The Imperfect Guide to Success, your new book that's just out on Amazon, also available on Kindle, I saw. Thank you and
Yes.
best of luck. I'm sure there's big things still coming.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Thank you for having me.